It started from him just coming in the room saying, look, mom is gone. She's going out. You can wake up and you can come out, come in my room and play the game. I'll never forget that night. I had on Little Mermaid underwear. I was just a child. And that night he called me into the room from out of the room with my other two younger sisters. And I got up and I remember going in the room just like I would any other time. And I remember him saying to me, I need you to come and sit next to me on the bed, and I'm going to allow you to play. He tried to hand me the remote controller, and then when I would reach for it, he would grab it back, which is something he never done before. So I remember after him doing it 2 or 3 times, I began to just say to him, you know what, just keep the game. I'm going to bed. So the third time when he went to hand me the remote controller, he snatched it back, and I remember him getting on top of me and pinning me down and just doing things that didn't feel right. I remember kicking and screaming, and I remember him, just pulling my legs back and I remember it hurting so bad. And at that very moment, I remember something warm rolling down my leg, and it was blood. And I couldn't understand. With all the screaming, with all the yelling, nobody came. Nobody could hear me because my mother wasn't home and my little sisters was in the other room asleep. As he finished inside of me and different things like that, when I got up, he told me, get up and go and clean yourself off and walk inside the bathroom. And at that moment, I was confused because the person who should have been protecting me for some reason was taking advantage of me. I remember going inside the bathroom and beginning to get in the tub. And as I removed my underwear, seeing blood, I was confused. I was hurt. I hadn't even had a menstrual cycle yet. And I just felt alone at that moment. When I got out of the tub, I remember going in the kitchen to grab a knife, and I remember him walking into the kitchen, and I hid it behind my back. And I remember him saying to me, if you say anything, I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to everybody in the household. So of course I was young, I was afraid, I was nervous, but I remember climbing right back into the bunk bed and laying on the bottom bunk with my 2 little sisters, saying if he came in and tried to do that to them, I was going to kill him that night. But from that night on, it never happened again after that. So when my mother came in from the club that night, I didn't say anything. I didn't tell anybody because I was just a little girl, nervous. He took my underwear. He hid them somewhere outside of the door, but I continuously bled that night. I remember the next morning, my mother coming inside of the room, and she thought I just had my menstruation, but that wasn't it. I was, raped the night before. She gave me some pads. I never said anything, but from that moment on, I just began to hate men. I began to hate myself. I began to feel so alone. At that moment, I began to get on at a young age. My mother died, just a few years after I was young. My father, as I stated, was in and out of federal prison, and I just turned to the street. So I eventually started sleeping with women because I began to hate men. And while I was out sleeping with different women, I would only target a certain type of women. I would only deal with women who were virgins like me because in my mind, I wanted to do what was done to me. I wanted to take something so valuable from them. How dare they be able to, choose who they wanted to give their virginity to. And mine was taken from me by my brothers. So I would just meet women. I slept with over 100 women. Half of them, I don't even know their names. I would meet women and I would just tell them things like, I love you and you're so beautiful, just for them to be able to allow me, to sleep with them. I would go to the toy stores and buy and things like that, and they would let me take their virginity. From there, I just went into this dark place. I want to say starting at 13, 14 years old, I just became that problem child. I was a threat to my neighborhood. I really just didn't care about society. I didn't care about myself. I felt worthless. I felt unimportant. So as I stated, I just targeted certain people. I got into a stage where I started dating my kid's father at the time. I was young, probably just now getting ready to go into high school. And this is where he took most of the time, abusing me and beating me and different things like that. And a lot of it stemmed because he knew my secret. He was the only one who knew my secret, and he would use that as a way to make like he was caring for me. But that's what what he was doing. He was literally beating me, taking advantage of me. And I'm not talking about abuse. Some people, they get, a slap or they get choked. I mean, he was beating me down, blacking my eyes. I had a miscarriage. He kicked me in the stomach while being pregnant. We were living in our first condo, and I remember him while being asleep. I was watching the Maury Show. I'll never forget it. And I woke up to the house burning and on flames, and we were on a high floor in a condo. He set the place on fire with me in it. And the only way I was able to make it out without jumping is because he took the cover, threw it in the shower, soaked it with water, and he wrapped me and him in it, and we ran out through the front door. Only way I survived that. But I went through a lot of abuse. I was getting beat on left and right. So now I feel like the second man. I finally begin to trust in my life. Now you're beating on me. Now you're abusing me. You're not abusing me, sexually right now, but you're beating on me. So, from there, I just went into this dark place to where I began to bring women home, in the bedroom. And, we would have all kind of and we would party. We would get. To me, that was living my best life, even though I knew I deserved more. So at a young age, I would say, elementary going into middle school, there would be a program here in Florida that is called DARE, Abuse Resistance Education. And every day we would go in there, they would teach us, say no to and stay away from. And I remember I would sit there and be like, well, that's not my lifestyle. Is all around me. And at a young age, my dad started teaching me, just how to cook, how to make $10 turn into $20, $20 turn into $40, because he never wanted any of his daughters to have to sleep with a man for money or lay on their back. He was a great father. Some of you watching this might say, no, what kind of father would, teach a child that instead of teaching them how to ride a bike? But if you are not from the neighborhood that I grew up in, you wouldn't understand. So I got out there, I learned how to provide for myself. And I got out there, I began to sell while using, I began to cook. I didn't care if there was a pregnant woman that wanted, I don't care if it was a 12-year-old that wanted. It was about me surviving and providing for myself. So I got out there. I started hustling. I started picking up, mug shots. I started being incarcerated over and over again. Jail just became a repeated door. It was mug shot after mug shot, after mug shot, after mug shot. I began to spend time away from my children. And I began to realize that it wasn't about getting your kids that name brand pair of $200 shoes. I thought I was the best, child in the world because my kids wanted for anything. They had any video game that came out. I wanted to make sure they wouldn't have to do, little things, that would put them in situations that I experienced. So I was a great provider. As my dad was. I loved my children with everything, but I didn't realize that jail and prison was becoming a revolving door because, it happened. A lot of my brothers and sisters have mug shots and things like that also. But as I stated, it became a revolving door. So selling, it worked, but it landed me back behind bars. Doing fraud, it worked, but it landed me back behind bars. Stealing cards and just different things I did, it worked, but it landed me behind bars, and it eventually started to take a toll on my children because they were falling behind, in school and things like that because of my decisions. But it was all I knew. So when I was in jail, I actually went through different things, as I stated, of being in there. I was already, out having and living a wild life. So being incarcerated in jail, you're around nothing but women. And I went through different experiences in there. I would have my husband, because at this time I ended up getting married. I left my kids' father. He ended up getting sentenced to like 17 years or 20 years or something like that. Yes, for robbing a jewelry store. So I ended up getting married and things like that. And I got married at a very young age. Me and my husband were young. I was 19 years old. He was underage, 15 years old. And while getting into this situation where I was incarcerated, because as I stated, it was repeated, I would sleep with other women, even in jail. And when my husband would come and see me, we would both visit my husband together. I would let him know, look, when I get out, this is going to be my new girlfriend. She's going to come home and be living with us. She's going to be sleeping with us. This is what she's in here for. And I remember going to church one night. There will be these people that would come inside of service, and I had no intentions of really getting to know God. I just wanted to get out. So I was like, I'm going to try this God thing out. I went down to church that day, and as we sat in the day room, I remember my now pastor of Out for Life Ministries in Fort Lauderdale, I remember them saying to me, look, if you're going to try this God thing, you have to be serious. I'm already sitting down there in church front row with a girl I was dating on the left of me and on the right of me at the same time. At that moment, I got up, and when they said that you needed to take this moment serious, I remember looking to the left and the right of me and breaking up with each one of the young ladies. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to see if this Jesus thing works. And at that moment, they led me to Christ. And I don't know, just that night, things just began to change for me. I began to have an encounter with God on a stainless steel bunk bed that night. And I just couldn't stop crying. It was such a beautiful feeling. For the very first time in my life, I felt like everything was going to be okay. I remember getting up the next day and sitting inside the cell with my friend, my other bunkie, the other person I was in there incarcerated with, my roommate. And I remember just sitting there on the bottom bunk and saying to myself, I got to go back and talk to the 12-year-old, 11-year-old child in me and say, you don't understand now, but everything will be okay later. Because I believe sometimes to heal, you got to go back and tell the younger version of you, I don't care if you're 40 years old, that everything will be okay later. So from there, my life just began to change. I was released. The judge allowed me not to do 15 years in prison, even though I was supposed to do this time, because the judge was tired of seeing me. I remember sitting in the courtroom being shackled to everyone. And it was so weird. It was like it was a little bird flying around the courtroom. And back then I got a mouthful of gold teeth. And I remember the judge saying to me, Shakira McFadden, what is funny? You think this is a game? You're a threat to society? And I remember saying, no, it's a bird in here. And she just laughed and thought it was the funniest thing. And she thought I was insulting her. But no, I really was seeing this bird in the spiritual realm. And I just began to smile. And she said to me, you know what? You got a beautiful smile. It was really weird because this was a tough judge. She sent everybody to prison. And she said, you know what? I'm going to give you one more chance. I'm going to send you home with 2 years house arrest, weekly testing, followed by mandatory 15 years in prison if you come back before me. And, you know, I just never came back. I got out. I joined my church. I began to change my life. I began to minister all over social media. And this is how my platform started growing. I began to tell people, you know, you don't have to use, you know, as a way to get, you know, I just began to encourage other people like me, and my life began to change from there. I ended up writing a book called I Never Knew My Yes Would Cause Me So Much Pain. So a lot of times I go back, and I do have times, like I said, life be lifing. There are times when you are taken back to that place. And my husband is not even allowed to wear certain hats around me because of the hat that my brother wore, you know, that night while molesting me. But when I get thoughts and I have times where I'm triggered by my past, I just push and remind myself that I got to keep going. There are people like my children depending on me to keep going. I have moments where I cry. I have moments where I break down. I have moments where I scream. I have moments where before I walk in my house, when I pull in the driveway, I got to take a few minutes just to get my mental thoughts together. But it's constantly reminding myself that you don't want to go back to the old you. So when I feel like that, I do things like write. When I feel like that, I do things like preach and minister. And as I state, I'm a counselor. It's just a lot of things I'm doing to stay focused. I truly believe that if you are not occupying yourself with something to do, this is how you become suicidal. I've been married 2 decades now, and my husband, I have a 13-year-old bonus child. My stepson, I love him dearly now. But in the beginning, that wasn't, the case. I'm going to be honest with you. It took me to a dark place where I had suicidal thoughts. I felt like, now here comes the third man, to take advantage of me and take me back to this place, after I told you what I've been through in life. And he ended up making a child on me in the middle of our marriage. And while doing this, it took me to a dark place. First time I ever had a bottle of in my hand with a bunch of pain pills and prescription medication. And, I just wanted to die. I started taking pill after pill. I was just sick of life. I just came to a point where I figured, okay, this was my life. I'm never going to be anything. Nobody's never going to love me, through my faults and through my scars. And it took me to a dark place. I wouldn't allow him to go and see the child, but eventually he started sneaking out and, going to do that. And my pastors just got me back into that place, to remind you, look, you're not going to be the first woman who husband, makes a child on them, and you won't be the last. And I eventually made the decision to fight for my marriage and to keep going. My husband ended up, because he has about 20 something mug shots also, he ended up battling. So for 6 years, he was on bad. I'm talking about hallucinating, running through the house, swinging knives, and being up for days, not bathing, not showering, and going through his own stage. And I just really had to just rely on God's strength. It's hard when everybody is depending on you to be a great wife, a great mother, a great minister, a great counselor, a great friend. But what do you do when you get into a place where you're saying, oh, the weight of the world, it seems like it's winning? I just been through a whole lot in my life. And as I stated, when I feel myself getting into those down, broken places, all you can do is, just lean on your faith and lean on God. And some people say, how do you believe in a person you can't see? And I have to remind myself that feeling I experienced when I laid in that cell on that stainless steel bunk bed, that reminded me that everything was going to be okay. If you are a hustler, it never goes away. It's just about doing it the right way now. Back then, I would do things like sell and I would do fraud. I would do whatever I had to do, get women to pay for things for me to make money. And this time around, it's just hustling the right way. I'm a real estate agent now. I'm a counselor. I don't care if I got to get in the kitchen and, cook up some good spaghetti and sell plates on the streets. I'm going to do whatever I got to do it the right way. And that's just, where I am at right now. Why? Because my life, as I stated, is before people when I want to do wrong, because there are times you'll think in your mind, look, the way you're doing it this way, it's taking too long. You can go through a bank line right now and pick up $40,000. You know the way to do it, but no, it's not worth it. It's not worth me being away from, my kids. It's not worth me letting people down. I have 500,000 followers on my Facebook page, Shakira McFadden. I have a huge TikTok following. And it's like you get to a place where people is depending on your strength. So I just rather do it the right way. It's been 13 years. And since I've been saved, I've hit the ground running, and I don't plan on going back.